In this case. Okay, now I'm going to take and speak about something that's totally different from my book for a second. And I mean, it's light years away, you know, light years away. Okay, in fact, talking about light is matter. It's a well-accepted fact for those of you that have never heard this before. Light has weight, it's affected by gravity, but it's like real fine subparticles. It's smaller than anything they've ever been able to measure or anything. That's why they don't understand what it is. Okay, now it is proven that we have antimatter. You see, our molecules go around like this, and then the antimatter would be the same amount of energy, but it goes around like this. When those two come together, it just equals out one another, and then it's like a atomic thing. It just goes into energy. Now, scientists say there must be galaxies out there, whole things out there that's antimatter, but they can't find them. I wonder why. The light from an antimatter galaxy coming to us from far off in space would hit the lens of our telescopes, or just the atmosphere, or anything that has to do with us, and it would immediately just cancel out and go to energy, and it would be so slight you wouldn't notice it. But then when you look out there, what would you see? You guessed it, a black hole. So they come up with this BS that these black holes are like, you know, compressed matter and light can't escape. That's the theory that they will be accepted sometime in the future, but not now. They want to believe this stuff, so we'll let it pass. But that's what black holes are. Okay, let's talk about something else, really scientific and really brainwise. Okay, we're going to talk about Einstein's theory of relativity. I am not disputing the whole thing, but I'm just one little thing that just kind of bothers me. I tried to read that book, and it really didn't make a lot of sense to me. I just kind of, there were certain parts I didn't understand. I'm not trying to criticize Einstein. I'm just saying maybe he wasn't that great a writer or something. So when I'm watching this TV show, they explained the whole thing, and now I understand it. They said when Einstein was on a bus, he looked at a clock face, and he realized that if he was moving at the speed of light, the light from the clock face would never change. True. That makes perfectly good sense. But while I'm watching this, all these genius-like individuals that are presenting this information, not one, ever come up and said, hey, you know what? If the light from the clock was going this way, and we were going at the speed of the light this way, it would be going twice as fast, now wouldn't it? So now, what's the theory now? Or if we go with speed of light, does time speed up, or does it slow down? I mean, I'm not sure. I am not criticizing. I am not questioning, because that goes well off the scope of this conversation. If we go to the speed of light, does time slow down? I don't know, but I do know this: what he based his theory on was a crock, and I want to share this with you too. There's one of these very brilliant scientist or whatever at one of these universities, and he's trying to send messages back in time. I think he got a government grant for this, and he's trying to do it on the principle of Einstein's, you know, we're going at the speed of light. Somehow he thinks if you take a light and then you go like this in the sky, it's going faster than the speed of light. Well, not exactly. If we could slow light down to where we would actually see it move, it wouldn't look like, it wouldn't appear like this. He has this thing where he thinks it's moving like this, you know, real fast, real fast, real fast. But that would not be the case. It would be moving more like this, you see. But let's just let him think. Let him go on this wild goose chase. Back to the book. When I read this book, it took me 3 years, and I did a lot of research on this book. I wanted everything to be as factual as I could possibly make it. Of course, like when you watch something about the Alamo or the Titanic or something, nobody really knows what those people said. So I did the same thing. I just took all the facts of the case, everything I could possibly get my hands on, and I tried to put it in the book and just make sense out of everything. I went out and got an astrology book and started studying most of the things in here. There was a figure, this figure, I put this on the wall, drew this on the wall, and as I'm writing the book, I keep thinking, when I get to this part of the book, I have to make sense out of this figure. It didn't make any sense, and then my daughter bought me a one of these things where you look at the stars, and there that figure was. It's called Serpo the Serpent. Okay, for those of you that don't know, and I didn't know myself until I researched it, Serpo the Serpent is a subsign of Scorpio. Each sign has three subsigns, a 10-day period in each subsign of the zodiac. So that is a subsign of Scorpio. It is from October 23rd to November 1st. Okay, now that was mailed, that was the return address under the Halloween card that was mailed on October 27th, 1971. Okay, that was mailed during that period, that Serpo the Serpent. I believe that what he was trying to say with that, and I'm pretty convinced, because when I looked up to see what people born under that sign are supposed to be heavy into the occult and such, and it kind of described him. I think that's what he was trying to say on that letter of return address, that the Z was born under the Serpo the Serpent in that 10-day period. I think that if anybody says their grandmother was a Zodiac killer, or their father or uncle or whatever, unless they were born during that period, it just doesn't make any sense for me to believe that. Okay, when I first put this book out on the internet a couple years ago, it created a little controversy among people in the Zodiac killer clubs. They were kind of hard convinced of what I was talking about. So what I did, and I'm not, that's water over the dam. But what I would like to say is that I thought, I got a little determined to say, okay, I'm going to find some other murders that he did using this Mount Diablo code. And I went over to Washington and I started looking up the Chronicle, and I did find this. Now this is taken from the San Francisco Chronicle. This is dated November 10th, 1969. Now this incident took place on the day before, November 9th. The Zodiac Killer was in San Francisco that day. And how do I know? Because he mailed a letter to the Chronicle that day reporting that he was not going to report his murders to the police anymore. He was going to disguise them as routine robberies, killings of anger, and a few fake accidents. And yes, it is true. I cannot even really prove that this incident is a homicide, but I do believe this is a Zodiac Killer murder for a couple of different reasons. It has all the fingerprints on it. On that day, the sun, the moon, and Neptune was in Scorpio. On that day, Venus, Jupiter, and Uranus was in Libra. On that day, Mars was in Aquarius, and Saturn was in Taurus, and then Pluto was in Virgo. This would be considered a very extremely strong formation as far as the horoscope people were concerned. This is what they would refer to as a triangle, because we have two over here and then we have these up here forming a big triangle. It's happened in San Francisco, and that is in Virgo Diversion. Virgo Diversion is an earth sign. This occurred in Land's End Park. Land's End Park, earth sign. The place name connection is there. The star configuration is there. Okay, what the article is saying, that two men were out fishing on this rock in Land's End Park, and one got washed off with the wave. The other one stayed there and reported to the police. His name is George Triganis. Do they get a lot of rogue waves out there in San Francisco? Now, if there is anybody watching that knows anything about these people, this incident or anything, I would love to hear from you. I would love to learn a little more about this if anybody knows anything. According to the 1940 census, which was the last one available to people, there is about 14 people with that last name, Treganos, in the United States, and yes, they all lived in San Francisco. There was a George Treganos, and according to the census, he would have been 77 years old at that time, so it's not the same George Treganos. There is no other George Treganos listed in the census or in any of the city directories. So we have the place name connection, we have the star configuration, we also have the circumstantial, you know, like washed off by a rogue wave type thing. Now, here comes the crazy part. There was one other thing that I haven't mentioned yet. Treganos is Latin for triangle. And of course, yes, all this is just one big coincidence. As I was writing this book, I don't think I mentioned that one of the theories I had about one of the letters he wrote, it was the Exorcist letter from January of 1974. This is the one that goes into the billowy wave, into the suicidal grave, and at the bottom it gives this figure. It was always my theory that this had something to do with water, because I thought from those lines he had drowned somebody, and I thought that this was either bodies of water or a rock formation in water or something to that extent. I looked and looked, tried to find it. I just didn't. I didn't find anything. But then after I had kind of stumbled on this Land's End Park thing, I thought to myself, you know, this could be a rock formation at Land's End Park. So I booked a flight to San Francisco, and I viewed it at. I went all around that place at high tide, low tide. I couldn't find it. It just didn't pan out. So if anybody would ever see this formation or anything like this, a murder occurred there, and I would think it would have something to do with water. That's for you to discover. I had a wonderful time. I went to the top of Mount Diablo, and the top of Mount Diablo, the magnetic north was exactly where I thought it would be. If you turn that one way or the other, you just can't get those kind of things in the right place. So I'm very sure that is the Mount Diablo code. I hope anybody that gets my book enjoys it. I think I've bored you enough with all this stuff, and I just like to say, you have a good day and God bless. Thank you for watching.